30, shall we begin?
Sorry, mate. Yeah.
So first and foremost, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate your time more than anything. There's a million things you could be doing right now, and so for you guys to want to spend a little bit of time with me means the world to me. I do want this to be impactful time. I do want to do a good job for you guys. So I'm just going to put out my story out there. I'm going to deliver it as raw and as real as I know how to, and hopefully I can inspire some people along the way. Cool? All right. So I want to start by this picture, and the reason I chose this picture is because this was one of the first moments that I was truly proud of what we had created. And so in this picture, my family's there, my wife and I, we have a blended family, we've got 6 kids total. They were really proud of me, right? It was a cool moment, they're proud. I've got some of my teammates there that started in my first location. They had literally been there from the beginning, and they're standing on the front porch of our newest, biggest location in downtown Wilmington. They're proud of the work they've done, right? And then I have some of Wilmington's finest flanked on both sides. The mayor was there, they're proud. We're bringing something different to downtown. We're bringing together people outside of restaurants and drinking. We're doing something that's just gonna kind of create a different quality of life for the folks who are downtown. And they were proud of that. What this picture doesn't show though, is that if you were to zoom out and kind of take a bigger snapshot of downtown, 1 block to the north, on the corner of, or kind of right in front of Grace and Water Street, is Hotel Ballast. And 17 years before this picture, 20 years since now, I walked into Hotel Ballast, the Hilton, downtown Wilmington at that time, to meet a friend, and I was greeted by 3 DEA agents. Boom. Mike Barnhart, you're under arrest. You've been federally indicted for a nonviolent drug offense, drug conspiracy. United States of America versus Mike Davis Barnhart. Big deal. It was a big deal. And so I've always struggled to try to get people to understand what is Axis. And people have asked me for a long time, what does Axis mean? How did it start? And so it's easy to say we're a gym. It's easy to say, we try to work with people. We're a coaching company. But people don't really understand the roots. They don't understand the intensity. They don't understand the journey. They don't understand what I've gone through to create these spaces that impact people in these ways. And so today, for the first time, this publicly for sure, I'm going to share my story. And my story is a story about strength. It's about endurance. It's about conditioning. Think of conditioning as capacity to do things, right? And so these are terms we use in the strength and conditioning world, but make no mistake about it. These are terms that are applicable into all of our lives. Strength is the ability to force change. Endurance is the ability to do things over and over and over again until you get them perfect, right? Capacity is what we're able to do in short intervals of time. And so when I talk about my personal story, we're a transformation company, but I am a transformation of my own. And so when people ask me, what is Axis? People will never understand that Axis came from some of the darkest times in my life. And I'm really proud of that. So, a little bit heavy, I want to tell you guys my story. Inmate 21516056, 23 years old. So to understand Axis, you have to understand me a little bit. To understand me, I got to kind of take you from where a lot of the dysfunction started. So unfortunately, not an uncommon story. I grew up in a household that was plagued with addiction, alcoholism, and substance abuse, right? All the dysfunction that comes along with that, you guys know the deal. I've always been a pretty high energy dude. I've always been a dude that never really appreciated status quo. I've always been somebody that wanted to push the boundaries a little bit. I've always been someone that was understanding the concept of risk was never, I've got a little bit of a higher tolerance of risk, right? Which makes me a great entrepreneur, but as a kid going through elementary school and middle school, it did not make me a great student. And so I was a kind of a troubled kid from the very beginning. I didn't have impulse control. I didn't really understand how to just navigate these feelings and this energy in a way that was healthy. I have a 9-year-old now and a 12-year-old now, and they're going through the same things. And so it's like I'm starting to realize that now's my time to share the story, because I don't want them making the same mistakes I made. I want to control the narrative of this. Does that make sense? And so going into school, troubled kid, always started getting in trouble. I was never like a disrespectful dude, never a violent dude, but I was always just rambunctious, tons of energy, and didn't know how to control it. Got in trouble my first time when I was in 8th grade. Some dudes that I knew took a car off of a farm. I got in the car, they drove this truck around, they ended up bailing the car, and I get arrested for being in a stolen car. I stood in front of a judge as an 8th grader and was called an irreconcilable juvenile delinquent. And so what that means is that when you get in trouble as a minor, they talk to your teachers, they talk to people in your life. Like, is this a one-off? Is this a good guy that made a bad mistake? Is this guy a knucklehead? And the teacher's like, this dude's a knucklehead. And so irreconcilable juvenile delinquent means that a judge when I was in 8th grade told me, we're gonna have trouble out of you for the rest of your life. You are somebody that we're always gonna have problems with. And I didn't realize at the time, that stuck with me. Here I am 30 years later talking about it, right? So as I go through high school, addiction, alcoholism, it becomes very much a part of my life. I'm a party kid. I was an athlete, I worked my way through high school, I bought my own car, things like that. But make no mistake about it, like I was an addict. I was someone that my life revolved around drinking, getting high, partying, and being a knucklehead. And so when I finally graduated high school, I moved to Wilmington, and my goal moving to Wilmington is I started to realize people were getting in trouble around me. Like I didn't really want this life anymore, but I didn't understand growth. I didn't understand how to change. And so I get to Wilmington in 1999, and the partying just only intensifies because now the stage is bigger, right? My mind didn't change, my habits didn't change, but I wanted to change. I just didn't know how to do it. And so as I go into these college years, criminality starts to become another part of my life because ultimately using drugs and selling drugs is part of the everyday. I'm this person who enjoys being in these party scenes. I'm this person who enjoys just being that guy, trying to be cool. And so it all comes to a head at the downtown, in the Wilmington, the Hilton right here in downtown Wilmington. My mouth's dry, I'm nervous when I do something. And so I walk into the Hilton, downtown Wilmington, and go to meet a friend of mine. Instead, I met my 3 DEA agents. They throw me on the ground, they arrest me. They walk me out of the back of the Hilton. They walk me on the Riverwalk to the corner of Princess and Water Street to the federal courthouse. They take me up on the 3rd floor, they bring me into an office. And in that office is everything they need and everything I need to know that I'm in a lot of trouble, right? Documented all the things that I've done over the last couple of years, being this party kid thinking that what I was doing was okay because we're all young and make mistakes. But it was time for me to pay a price for the decisions that I made for a long period of time. That was the scaredest I'd ever been, was sitting there talking to these agents because I knew I was in a lot of trouble. I knew my life was changing. I knew it was a very big moment, and I didn't want to not understand the gravity. But again, I'm still young. I was 22 years old at the time, and so there was a part of me that just didn't really grasp it. But after you get arrested in the federal system, you have about 12 to 14 month time where you go through county jails. And so that was the first time I'd been sober in a long time. And so it gave me the opportunity to really kind of reflect on the person that I was. And so I started to realize that, man, people come back. This isn't a place I want to be. How the hell did I end up here? Like this wasn't in the cards, right? Like this obviously wasn't the plan. And so I stand in front of a judge in Raleigh, 23 years old, and he says, Mr. Barnhart, you probably could have been anything you wanted to be in life, but here we are today. And I hope, I'm going to give you this time, I hope that you get what you need from it, and you come back and you can do something productive with your life. You're going to be a young man when you come back. You're a young man now. I wish you the best. 84 months in the Bureau of Prisons. Boom. Man, nonviolent drug offender. Never thought I'd be in that much trouble, but here I was. And so 4 or 5 weeks later, I'm on a bus headed to prison. And so I find out I'm going to Petersburg. And in Petersburg, there's a medium, there's a low, there's a camp. And so as a nonviolent drug offender, I'm assuming I'm going to the low or the camp. We stop at the medium first. Barnhart, off the bus. Me and about 4 other people get sent into this building. This is it. Housing Unit D. So you go through receiving right here, and you get your issue, right? You get your clothes, you get your toothbrush, your soap, all that stuff. And when you walk on this other side, there's nobody on the yard. And they do it to where you can walk through the yard and just kind of make it to your housing unit. And I had to grow up between here and here. Basically, I realized that I was at one of those moments in my life where one of 2 things was going to happen. Either I was going to change and I was never going to come back to a situation like this, or I was going to get shifted into somebody that was even less of a version than who I knew I could potentially be. And in that moment, Access was born. Cool? Kind of heavy. I don't want this to be a prison story. I don't want this to be about me going to prison, right? Because if we think about our lives, right? Prison is my metaphor for feeling stuck, feeling trapped, feeling like, we're in these situations in our life where we just don't know what to do next, right? We're in these situations, we don't have control. We feel like we've lost our ability to steer our energy in the way that we want. We're just kind of like, how the hell did I end up here? So we've all got those, right? Family, work situations. We all have these situations in our life where we're just stuck, man. We're trapped. They're these little micro prisons of our own. And so what I want to talk about today is the process of growth that I went through from being this young knucklehead that walked into the Hilton when I was 22 years old, and now coming home in 2008 trying to do something very different. Because when I came home in 2008, I made a promise. I promised that the city that saw me at my worst was going to see me at my best. And that's what started Access Fitness. So when we talk about this growth, right? For me, and make no mistake about it, like, I don't want to sit up here like I've got it all figured out. That is not my role. That is not who I am. I am an entrepreneur. I'm somebody that truly does believe I have a good enough mission to fight for, but by no means do I have all the answers. So all I can tell you is the process that I've used, and hopefully you guys can find some value in that and you can implement that in your own lives. Does that make sense? And the process for me kind of went in these 3 steps. The first was self-discovery. I had to understand who I was. I had to really kind of sit there and look at myself in the mirror when I was in these really tough situations and understand, like, who the hell am I, man? Like, how did this happen? What do I stand for? I had to understand how environments and the people in our lives, how they play really critical roles and how they really shape our energy and push us to be bigger versions of ourselves or smaller versions of ourselves. And then I had to be honest about what kind of impact am I making, right? Am I having good influence on people? Am I not impacting their life in a real way? And that takes accountability. And so this is the process that I went through, and I'm going to kind of share with you guys right now. Man, God, it's tough up here. So, the strength and power, again, the story of strength, endurance, conditioning. My strength came from getting through prison, right? I certainly was someone, again, I have a lot of energy. So when I got into prison, like I had to find an outlet. I had to do something productive. I realized I couldn't have educated conversations with people. I realized I didn't really have a lot to offer. I had been partying for years, so like my physical shape was not great, right? And so I started to take care of myself. I realized that I had this brain and this body was all I was in control over. And so I started this path of growing. At the time, I didn't really know it was called growth, self-improvement. I was like, I got to start reading. I got to start understanding the world. I got to start putting myself in a position where I don't end back up in here. But ultimately, what that led me to was starting to ask the tough questions. Who am I? What do I stand for? And how do I fit into this world, right? How do we fit into these markets? How do we fit into these teams? How do we fit? Because once you understand who you are, you understand what you stand for, and you understand how you fit into the world, it doesn't matter what anybody else does, right? You are confident in your own ability, and that's where your strength, that's where my strength certainly came from. I hadn't seen my mom in about 1.5 years, and she came to visit me. And when I walked in, I could just tell she was like smiling to see me. I thought she was just happy to see me, and she was. But she was like, Mike, she was like, you're walking different, you're talking different, like, you look different, you look great. She said, I'm proud of you. I hadn't heard her say that in a long time. That was a big deal. And over here, my dad, he'd been an alcoholic all of my young life, right? About the time I got arrested, he got sober. And the whole time that I was in prison, he was sober. He went back to school. He got his master's degree. He went into completely different field. And so on one side, I was feeling my parents being proud of me for the first time in a long time. On the other side, my dad was telling me, like, man, just make the right choices and your life changes forever. I swear to God. I'm a witness to it. And so it's like I had somebody that was giving me belief, and I had somebody that was giving me exposure. And that's all I needed to change. Does that make sense? Thank you. I appreciate that. And so the accountability side of that is understanding if you're going to start asking yourself these questions, who am I? What do I stand for? How do I fit into this market? How do I fit into this world? How do I fit into these teams? Then you have to be willing to hold yourself accountable. If the answer's not what you want it to be, then you have to realize you're not yet the version of the person that you need to be in order to accomplish these things. And that's where accountability starts coming in. You've got to create a standard in your life. I had to create a standard in my life and be very real with expectations and standard and what I was going to have to do in order to make the changes that I want. It's not easy stuff, man. This is heavy stuff. I'm giving you guys a 20-minute PowerPoint, but this is like heavy stuff, right? So strength and power really for me came down to me understanding who I was, what do I stand for, and just being really confident and me owning my story one day, right? And then the second thing that I really had to understand was the environments. I came home in 2008, and I left Wilmington. I got arrested in Wilmington. I intentionally came back to Wilmington. I went to the halfway house on Princess and 7th. And I came home in 2008. My first job was I got a job at Gold's Gym right off of Racine Drive, which is now the O2 Fitness, right? Mike Valentino, Skip Lennon. Skip's here today. They gave me an opportunity. They didn't have to. I've been home 3 days. They're like, hey, we'll give you an opportunity. I opened up my first brick and mortar location, Tops Athletics in Porter's Neck, about 3 years after that. And then I started to open up Access Fitness locations in 2016. We've got 4 locations now, right? We've got a Carolina Beach, Hampstead, we've got Wrights to the Beach, and right here downtown. But what I realized is even though I had started to change and I wanted these good things, I'm still going to be put in these environments where people aren't necessarily going to be conducive to what I want, right? And there's still very much a very negative energy. Sometimes, believe it or not, I've had some of the worst experiences when it comes to people accepting my ability to change, being right here as a free person. And so understanding how I was going to be perceived, understanding the environments that I was going to put myself into was going to be a really important part of the process. So I want to share a story with you guys that was shared with me by a young man by the name of Damon West. So Damon West was a quarterback for the University of Texas. He had his own addiction cycle that landed him in federal prison in the state of Texas. And when he was in federal prison, he met an OG. He met this guy that had been down a long time called Mr. Jackson. And Mr. Jackson said, Damon, he said, there's going to be 3, look at this place, and look at these environments we go into as boiling water. And we're going to put 3 things in boiling water. And all of them are going to come in, they're going to come into this boiling water, they're going to come into these really tough situations hard. But over time, boiling water is going to have an effect on people. So we're going to talk about a carrot, we're going to talk about an egg, and we're going to talk about a coffee bean. If you put a carrot into boiling water, over time, that boiling water breaks the carrot down, it becomes mush, it becomes no more good. It comes in hard, but it breaks down with the pressure, it breaks down with the time and the intensity. That's not who you want to be. You take an egg into boiling water, right? You got a hard shell outside, but what happens to that egg when you put it into boiling water for a long interval of time? It becomes hard all the way through. Your heart closes down, your brain closes down, you're not any good to anybody anymore anyway, you're cynical, right? Now you're this kind of institutionalized person that really doesn't offer much value anymore because you're just kind of this hardened dude. That's no good to anybody either. But if you take a coffee bean, the smallest of the 3, and you put it into boiling water and you let it sit there, water becomes coffee. So that's what you have to be. You have to change the environments that you go into. Don't let the environments change you. And that's what it's all about for me. So I understood how I walk, how I show up. When I walk into environments that I know are going to be tough, the way I position my shoulders, the way I position my chest, the way I position my chin, all affect other people because I know who I am, I know what I stand for, and I know how I fit in. Does that make sense? So when we start talking about change, you got to understand who you are. But always choose to be the coffee bean. Cool? More wine. And we can't forget the people in our lives. When we talk about change, relationships are the key to happiness, man. Relationships in my life, I've got people who have helped me more than I deserve. There are people that believe in me. My wife, I've got people that have given me opportunities that I probably didn't deserve, but they believe in who I am because I talk this way, whether we're in this conference room or whether we're somewhere in Costco or Walmart, I see you. This is who I am, right? And so I've been given a lot of opportunities, but I've also had to learn that not everybody is comfortable with growth. And so a lot of the people that we have in our lives, right, if you decide to start growing, it can make them feel challenged. It can make them feel small. It can make them feel like they aren't able to kind of match your energy, and so they start to play small, and it's not even intentional. It can be people that you love. It's not an intentional thing. But we need to understand there are people in our life that ultimately are going to be leaves, branches, or roots. And so understand, when we look at ourselves as the tree, right, there's going to be people that come into our lives, and they're going to be the leaves. They're going to be people that are here, they're hanging on, they're pulling from us, but as soon as that first wind comes, that first storm comes, boom, they're out. That's okay. That's who they are. That's the position they have in our life. And then you have branches. You've got people, they're going to be with you over some storms, right? They're going to be there. They're going to feel strong. But as soon as you step out far enough on the end and you really need them, well, they're going to break. The pressure breaks them down. They're going to disappoint you. It's going to be hard. It's all part of the deal. Does that make sense? But then you have roots. You have very few people that just nourish you and pour into you and give you the things that you need. And those are the people that make it all worthwhile. And so as we talk about people in our lives, understand who are the leaves, who are the branches, and who are the roots. We've all got it. And not being able to call out those people, when you start treating leaves like branches and branches like roots, that's when change becomes really difficult. So understand, if we're going to talk about growth, we got to understand who we are. We always got to choose to be the coffee bean. And we also have to understand that who are the leaves, who are the branches, who are the roots. I had to learn, I had not been home very long, and I had a lot of respect for a group of people. And I shared my dream with them. And my dream was I was going to open up a bunch of locations. And their response back to me is, why would you do that? Why don't you just stay here, do this one little location, just enjoy your life? Very valid point, but that wasn't my dream. And so what I realized in that conversation is that If you stay in environments where people don't appreciate your gift, they don't appreciate what you want to do, you will eventually shrink your gift to the size of their belief, not the size of your perspective. Does that make sense? So know your people. Thank you. And then impact, the final thing. This comes down to accountability. I pulled some random before and after pictures off our Instagram, and it's not about the physiological change, right? When you start to measure the impact of what we do, right, it's about the people that we have an impact on, right? This isn't about these people changing their bodies. These people showed up and they said, I want to change and be a better version for the people that I care about most. They showed up, they did the work. They understood who they were and what they wanted. And that's who we stand for as a business, right? It's not about sets and reps for us. When you walk into an Axis, it's much bigger than that, right? And so we understand who we are. These people understood who they are. They understood what they stand for. We're a fitness company, right? Like we're a coaching company, or we're a gym, whatever you want to call it. But my mission is clear, and it's worth fighting for. My whole goal, when I came home in 2008, when I said the city that saw me at my worst is going to see me at my best, a vision and a mission was born. My whole goal is to inspire, motivate, and coach people. And so that's what we do, and that's why we're a little bit different. So I want you guys to ride with me a little bit. There's about 200,000 people in Wilmington. I think they're expecting a crowd of about 2,000 here today. We are literally 1%ers right now. Imagine if everybody cared about how they showed up. Imagine if everybody understood who they were, what they stood for, and how they impacted the people in their lives. Imagine if we all were willing to give just a little bit more, hold ourselves to a different standard, hold ourselves accountable to a different way of life, and ultimately just show up and be the best version of the people we can be. How does that impact our communities? How does that impact our city? How does that impact our family? That's what we're talking about here. It's bigger than sets and reps. I am an entrepreneur, right? I am a business owner. I would be remiss if I didn't say, hey, we want business, right? We want you guys to understand that we've got locations in Hampstead and Carolina Beach and Wrightsville Beach and downtown. We want to attract people to what we're doing, but that's not what we're about. It really is about creating a space where people can become the best version of themselves, and I think we do a really good job of that. And lastly, I want to close. Me sharing my story, right, is really me being able to let the people that I care about most understand where I come from, understand the choices that I've made, understand the mistakes that I've made, and understand too that they can change at any moment. They can grow, they can be different, they can be the best version of themselves. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of heart. But if you're willing to show up every day and work towards a very specific goal, over time you can accomplish pretty great things. And for me, the reason I do all of this is because I know that when people show up as their best version, the impact that it has on everybody they care about is immeasurable. It literally is. Whenever somebody walks into our business, I envision throwing a pebble into a pond. Because that inspiration, that motivation, and the way that they are impacted is going to impact so many people in their life. And so Heather and I were able to take our family to Costa Rica, and we got married a couple of years ago. And that dude sitting on the bow of that boat was the same dude about 20 years earlier who had to walk across the prison yard. It's a big deal. It shows the power of what we're capable of. My story is one of strength, endurance, and conditioning, right? We've all got our own story. We've all got our own backstory. We're all trying to rebuild from something. And so if you guys could benefit from being a little stronger, having better endurance, increasing your capacity, your teams, your families, there's value in that for you guys. I appreciate you guys letting you be a part of my story. We'd love to be a part of yours. That's all I got for you.